Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome everyone to today's podcast. My name is Paul. I'm a recovered addict in Peterhead in Scotland. I'm really pleased to be joined today by George.
Hi everyone, my name's George and I'm an addict.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. We're here to talk about sobriety and the solution we found in the 12 steps, the fellowship, the literature, the program. So if you're here and you're looking for support, you can reach out in the conversation on YouTube or WhatsApp, wherever you see this posted. And there's lots and lots of meetings. You can pause and rewind, fast forward, and share this podcast wherever you wish. Like I say, if you're new to Cocaine Anonymous and you're looking for help, just put your name, number in the chat and we'll definitely get back to you. There's loads of other podcasts on the channel, so please check those out. There's recordings on each of the steps. There's lots of personal stories and there's topic discussions. So yeah, get involved. And like I say, further on in the podcast, there'll be information on the screen about how to get to in-person meetings. So without further ado, I'm really pleased to be joined by George today. I'm just going to hand the floor over to you, my friend.
Cheers, Paul. Thank you. I think I'll start as close to the beginning as possible, really. I don't think it gets much closer to the beginning than when I was born. So I was born to two heroin-addicted parents. My mum and dad both had struggled with the same illness that we do. And my dad was a very abusive man, very, very abusive man to my mum. I had older siblings that weren't my mum's children, but they were his children. And there's the old developed pictures, like from the old wind-up cameras of me, around drugs, around needles, around like trying to roll joints myself at like 2 years old, and that was the household I was born into. And we was very lucky because my mum left my dad when I was about 3. We just upped sticks and left with just a carrier bag. So there's no baby pictures of me anymore. I've only been told about the one I just told you about. I've never seen it personally. It was in the social services reports. And luckily we escaped. My mum met a great man, and then she herself got off drugs. I don't know how, and not the same way that we did. And that to me is, we'll get into that, but to me that's almost unbelievable to me. And I had a pretty normal childhood after that. And then I turned 15. I'd already been experimenting with drink by then. I turned 15, I was called into the kitchen and told that my biological dad had died from alcoholism. And that left... I didn't know him because I never got any contact with him, and I didn't want any contact with him, but it left a lot of unanswered questions. And there's unanswered questions, and then there's questions that are never going to be answered, and I think they are both two separate things, really. And just knowing that the questions that I had for him were never going to get answered just sort of changed something in my brain, because I wasn't really bothered that he died. The first words out of my mouth when my mum told me was, well, my dad's in there, sort of referring to my stepdad, who I called dad. So if that gets confusing, I do apologise if that gets confusing when I start talking about my parents. But yeah, after that, I sort of went off the rails a little bit, really. Started drinking quite heavily. Still only like, £3 cider, but I was just different even then to everybody else. I really was. It was, if you can drink a quarter of a bottle, I can drink half a bottle. You can drink half a bottle, I'll drink a full bottle. And I'm not a big guy by any means. It's too much alcohol for someone so young to be trying to take, really. It really is. And I was in a bad way from then, really, from like 15. And then when I turned 17, I was introduced to cocaine. And I've always said this, and I don't know if this is the right thing to say, really, but the problem with cocaine is that it's really good, actually, at the beginning. It really is. It does everything that it says on the tin, really. You feel better. You feel more confident. You feel at peace. Like, I didn't get the erratic paranoia, and the sleepless nights didn't come to me at the beginning. I mean, they sure did come, but they didn't come at the beginning. And I was having the time of my life. I can't pretend that otherwise. I really can't. It was just every weekend we'd get one. one bag between. Well, it started off one bag between three of us, me and two close friends. Then it was two bags. Then it was a bag each. Then it was two bags each, and that's just what it was like. And it was a running joke in my friendship circle that I'd be the first to ask when we was getting it. And it was true. I was the first to ask when are we getting one of them. I'll ring him. It was me who had all the numbers. It was me that went hunting for the numbers. I was obsessed. I really was. Talks about that in the book, the obsession of the mind and stuff like that. And that's where I was. I was obsessed with it. And it didn't seem to be a negative for me for a while. For a good couple of years, there wasn't really a negative to it. I was just as hungover as I would be if I were drinking like the next day when I woke up. But I was just up for longer. That's all it was doing for me. I was just up longer. And then I got into a relationship with a girl, got her pregnant quite early into the relationship. Didn't stop the drinking, didn't stop the using. And we hated each other, both of us, we did. And then and then the baby was born. And not long after that, we split up and she refused me access. And that all came to a head when I was arrested for assault on her. And this is an honesty program, and that wasn't an assault that had happened. That was an assault I was accused of. And I spent 16 hours in a cell, and I told myself that I wouldn't take drugs anymore. I'd had enough. And then we had to go to court for visitation rights and things like that, and she had to do a statement. And in that, I was forced through the courts to do a drugs test and alcohol. Like, they checked the alcohol levels in my blood as well. Came to my mum's house and took 4 hair follicle samples. And it came back negative that I hadn't been taking drugs. And I remember being really, really annoyed by that, because I was wondering what the hell I'd been taking then, you know what I mean? And that was just where my head was at, rather than being thankful and then taking that as a time to stop. It was like, well, then I need to spend more money, you know what I mean? I need to be getting better stuff. And then for a couple of years, again, it just continued. Just for a couple of years, things were fine. And then, I'd always tell myself that I don't have a problem because I'm not paying full price for it. I'm going hard with friends. I'm only doing it when I drink. And then I don't actually know what happened. I could never put my finger on it, really. But all of a sudden, it's not that I'm not paying for it. It's that I'm only doing it when I drink. And then it's not, I'm only doing it when I drink. It's now, well, at least I'm not doing it at work. And then after that, it's like, well, all right, I'm doing it at work, but at least I'm not getting it on tick or on bail. But then I was doing that as well, and I'd run out of excuses then. And rather than run out of excuses and think it's time to stop, I run out of excuses and realise, all right, well, you're a cocaine addict now. Just accept it. And that's what I did. I just accepted that I had a problem with cocaine and that problem wasn't going to go away. So I was taking it quite regularly, 3-4 times a week, and then just getting on with my normal life. I met somebody else, we got married, we had children, and this whole time I'm living a second life when they go to bed or when I'm at work, just a completely separate life. I'm racking up debt that they don't know about and taking out overdrafts they don't know about, and then I'll plot and I'll scheme and think of a way to get the money, and then I'll get the money. And all the while, I'm manipulating people to get me drugs, girls that like me, friends, just like, oh, let's go out on one of them. And then I'd take 3/4 of it, like just being just snide, really. And then about 6 months ago now, I was called in for a disciplinary meeting, and one of the girls that I'd been manipulating and telling her, we'll be together, I'm going to leave my wife and stuff like that, just so that she'd get me drugs. I told her on me, basically. I don't know how else to put it without sounding childish, really. She'd just like told the whole story, and I had to leave my job. And so that's what I did. I resigned. And again, there you go, there's your perfect excuse to stop now. There's your perfect reason. You've lost your job. You have to find another one. You've left your kids with no money. My wife had literally just got a graduate job. So I'd been telling the kids, you know, we're going to have so much now, whatever you want, you can have. There's going to be 2 full-time wages. And then my wife gets that job, and a week later, I'm out of mine. And I have to tell my kids, you know, things might be a bit tough for a while. Luckily, they weren't. I got a job straight away. But that job, the way it worked, like the way it sort of lent itself, I could just disappear and just take drugs at work. It was like, you know, it's in a supermarket, so there's these self-service tills. So I could spend like 30p, 60p on like a packet of chewing gum, but then take out 40, 50, 60 pound cash back. But it would come up on the bank statements that my wife could see that I'd spent it at the supermarket, not that it had come out of a cash machine. And at the same time, so that's for one dealer. And then at this other time, I've just met a dealer that's happy to bail me £200, £400 a time. And I've lost my job and I am depressed. Well, I think I'm depressed. So the drug taking it goes up a couple of octaves, and it was bad before. But now it's every day. And it's like £200 worth a day. And, you know, I'm forcing it up my nose. I'm forcing arguments with my wife, so she kicks me into the spare bedroom just so I can use by myself. Sending the kids to bed early, telling my wife to go to bed and read a book, pretending that I'm being nice. Oh, run yourself a bath, you know, go and read a book, have an early night, you deserve it. Really, the 3 most important people in my life I'm sending away because I want to use by myself, or I'm using at work, and it's getting so bad that the cocaine literally will not go up my nose anymore. And it's going down and it's dropping down onto a piss-soaked floor. And I don't care. It's just, I'll just scoop that up with my hand and it's going on my gums. Doesn't matter to me anymore. That's where I'm at. Doesn't matter. Only one thing matters. You know, I'm riding down to dealers' houses in the pouring rain. I fell off my bike once on the way. Straight back on my bike, straight there, with a really, really, really sore leg. Doesn't matter, because that'll take the pain away. And it all came to a head because I will stop talking about the war stories soon and tell you the good news. Because I feel like this has gone quite depressing quite quick, but it all came to a bit of a head. I had a drink with a mate and we were just sort of talking, and I was saying to him, you know, do the people on crack and heroin that live in, you know, the town centre on the streets, did they have it that bad really? Because, you know, at least they can sort of use by the cell and not have to hide it. And he just looked at me, and this is a man that I took drugs with quite a lot. He just isn't an addict like I am. He can put it down. And he looks me in the eyes and he goes, George, you're unwell. There's something wrong with you. And I say to him, I know, actually, I know. Because I've been taking drugs at work by myself. And I take it at home by myself, not just when I have a drink. And he tells me, you know, there is something wrong. And I believe him, finally. But there's time for one more. So I spent some money that night on drugs for the last time. And I take them. And I go to my mum's. I argue with my missus again. And this time I go to my mum's so I can use for like the whole night. And then I go to work the next day. And I'm in a state. And I remember that I've got a friend on Facebook that's been posting that he's got well from cocaine addiction. You know, I'd been wanting to get well for a bit. I kept downloading the cocaine sobriety apps, you know, the counters, and I just deleted the next day when I woke up and the whole cycle would start again. You know, my rock bottom was taking cocaine and then taking my dog's diazepam that he was getting for his anxiety with the fireworks to go to sleep. You know, you know things are bad when the vet is going to cut your dog off because taking too many tablets, and really it's just you just trying to go to sleep. Sorry, I took a bit of a detour then. I didn't mean to. So I see your friend has been getting well, and I just message him in the morning in a time of desperation, and I just say, look, I really need help here. If you don't tell anybody, can I ask you something? And I don't hear anything back. This was at about 9 o'clock in the morning. I don't hear anything back. I do my full shift at work, and I get home ready to grovel to the missus because I've been out all night. And I go to sit down. She goes, I don't know what you're sitting down for. And I thought she was going to kick me out. She goes, we're going out. We're going to your mum's. And I was like, I've just been at my mum's all night and then I've been at work. What we're going there for? And we go there. And just before we left, I said to her, look, the problem isn't the pain, because I'd told her that I was on these pain pills and that I was buying them off a dealer and that's where this debt was coming from. And just before we set off, I said to her, like, it's not the pain pills. We'll talk about it at my mum's. And we got to my mum's and they all sat me down and it was an intervention that they'd planned while I was at work to tell me that I was unwell, to tell me that I seriously needed help. And I sat down on the couch and I said, the problem isn't pills or anything like that. The problem's cocaine. I've got a cocaine problem. And as I finished the sentence, and this is not a lie, as I finished the sentence, literally put that full stop on it and my phone rang. And the name comes up because they rang me on Facebook Messenger. And the name comes up. It's the guy that I've messaged that morning, literally as I finished the sentence. So I go out into the back garden on the phone and he goes, are you all right? And I go, no, mate, I'm not all right. I really, really need help. I saw that you'd got well on Facebook and I was just wondering how you did it. And I thought he was going to tell me that he'd gone to rehab or that he just stopped. And, I don't know what I thought he was going to tell me, to be honest. But he just said the most important thing that I've ever heard. And I always promise if I'm going to try and spread the message that I'll say this. So if anybody's listening and they're struggling, I'll tell them, you don't have to feel like this anymore, the way you feel now. If you feel like shit now, if you feel awful, you don't have to feel like that anymore. And he told me that, and I just burst into tears because I didn't want to feel like that anymore. And he told me someone was going to be in contact. And I assumed they were going to be in contact the next day, of course. So I was like, yeah, they'll be in contact. They'll be in contact with the next few days, 3 to 5 working days or whatever. So I went back inside and I was crying. And I went, someone's just rang me and told me they're going to help me and I need it. And then my phone buzzed. And it was just someone I didn't know. And they just said, I heard you've got a bit of a problem. And I said, yeah, I do. And what I know now is that it was the guy who had rang, it was his sponsor. And he'd then sent me some details for a meeting. And I went to a meeting that night, an online meeting. And I was listening to all these people that didn't look like drug addicts, but they were telling me the stories. And, and it says in the promises, or it says in one of the readings, I'm awful at remembering which one's which, but it says, maybe we didn't hit a lower bottom as you, or maybe we were worse off. And some of them were worse off and some of them weren't as bad, but they all had one thing in common that I didn't. They were well and I wasn't. And that's what I needed. I needed to be well. So I listened to what they said. And the guy who I messaged, we were talking on the phone again, he was asking if I was all right. And then I'd heard them all talking about a sponsor, and I'd seen sponsorship and I'd seen Alcoholics Anonymous on the telly. I didn't really know what it entailed, but they'd been saying at these meetings to get a sponsor and to get a book. So I asked him if he'd sponsor me. I said, do you sponsor people? And he said, yeah. I said, well, would you be able to sponsor me? And he said, what I say to people that I'm trying to help now, it'd be an honour. He said, it'd be an honour to help you out. And then I think another day passed and there was a thud on the door. Well, on the letterbox, if you will, and something landed on the mat. And I opened it and it was a blue book. And it had a chip in it as well, a key ring that said newcomer. And then I did what I was asked to do. That was it. None of it was difficult. Can you write 10 things that you're grateful for every day? Well, yeah, I can try. Can you write 5 things that you're grateful you don't have to do if you're not taking drugs? Well, yeah, I can try and do that. Absolutely, I can. Do you think there's a power out there greater than yourself? No, I don't think that actually. No, well, can you control the tide? No. Can you control whether the sun comes up or down? No, I can't control that. Have you tried to stop taking cocaine by yourself? Yeah, a lot of times. Did you succeed? No. Think there might be something out there bigger than you. Yeah, maybe. Maybe there is. And that was all I had to do. That was it. I was off to the races then. things improved from that day. Literally from that day, things have never been better. And I just threw myself into it because I had no choice. I had no choice. It was do that or it was die. They were the only choices I had. My wife had one foot out of the door. She'd have took the kids. And I love all of them with literally everything that I've got. Literally everything. And I would do anything for them. I would do anything for them. But that one thing, and that was stop taking drugs. But now I had the opportunity to do that as well. Good. That was all I needed. I just needed something else to do than take drugs. So that's what I did. This. And I do it every day to the best of my ability. And my life's completely different now. Completely different now. Work. Don't know who I am, but in a positive way. Who's this who's just walked through the door? You know, people say to me, and this isn't a lie, this isn't ego either. Are you ever miserable, you? No. No, I'm not. Why would I be when I've got this? And you know, the higher power thing, I know some people struggle with that because of the religious connotations. But to me, mine's barely even, I mean, it's a spiritual program, but it's not even really massively spiritual. My higher power is this CA, the collection of people that are willing to help other people for no reason, for no gain. I mean, they do gain something out of it 'cause it helps their recovery. And I'm careful to tell that to people that I'm sponsoring. You know, I'm not doing this for no reason. It helps me as well. But there's no monetary gain. There's nothing to be gained. They just want to help. That was alien to me. I didn't have anybody that wanted that. Well, I didn't think I did. I always thought some people wanted something from me. But these people didn't. They just wanted to help. So that if that's not a higher power, what is? If that's not a power greater than myself? They say beyond human aid. I think it's beyond like one person. But if there's a collection of you all working towards one goal, then you can achieve anything. So my days now were filled with, things for this, helping people. I've lived a life full of service. Just yesterday, I was out in the pouring rain with another fellow, putting up posters for a new meeting that we're trying to set up. Well, not trying, we are setting up. And that starts soon, Tuesday the 9th of January, 2024. And that's in the Northwest area. And I just throw myself into service because to me, staying in that triangle is the most important thing in my life. And every single thing I do is with that in mind. And as a result, I'm better. I'm a better person. I'm a better father, better husband, better colleague, better employee, better friend, better son. I don't know how much time I've got left, but I'll quickly tell another story. Yesterday when we was postering, we was up near where my mum and dad live. My mum and her stepdad. I told you that I get confused. But where my mum and dad live, and I was out in the rain, and my dad walked around the corner. He did, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just putting up posters for the group that I'm a part of that helps me out." And the pride in his eyes was, that'll stay with me forever because this is a guy that I had physical fights with while I was in the madness. I used to walk in 8, 9 in the morning and he'd ask me, "Why am I so grey? You are colourless. You look dead behind the eyes." That was what he used to say to me. But yesterday, he could look at his son, his stepson, but his son, doing something for other people, putting up posters, trying to help people the way I've been helped. So I am going to end it pretty much on that positive note, but I just wanted to say, if you're listening to this and you are a newcomer, get a big book, get a sponsor like I did, and just do the things like I did because I didn't struggle to do them because they're not difficult. They're really not. They're not. And you don't have to feel the way you feel now anymore because there's people out there that will help you. They really will. So yeah, Paul, I think I'll wrap it up there.
Lovely. Glad you're here. Thanks for sharing that. That was a great message, very relatable, very down to earth, and some similarities there. I was brought up in a very good household, so I can't say that my mother was an alcoholic from the age of 8, but outwardly in every other way, everything was perfectly normal, and the progression of the illness, and I think, would I be right in saying, George, it was in your mid-teens where things start to take a turn? Did you say 16, 17?
Yeah.
Same here. I started hanging around with older bikers. I left school. Perhaps should have gone to university, but I left school straight into the world of work in a factory at 16, hanging around with older guys, like 5 to 12 years older than me. Ended up smoking, then dealing pot, and then the other stuff came along and became a lifestyle, you know. And you know, when you shared about the combination of you using with your work scenarios, yeah, a lot of identification there, you know. And I had some pretty responsible jobs, you know, with all the paraphernalia in my pocket, you know. And yeah, man. And you know, you mentioned the financial aspect. I can relate to that as well. Yeah, man. And you know, the absolute insanity of active addiction, you know, the things and circumstances people get involved in, that once they get clean, you look back, you go, how could that be? It doesn't make sense, you know. And that's the restoration to sanity, you know. And you know, even with years clean, I can tell you, you know, that bit doesn't get easy when you look back and you go, how could I be like having that job and having the relationship and the car and all, but everything else was just pear-shaped? You know, it doesn't add up. It's difficult. Yeah. Only working with others regularly, and trying to teach these steps, because that's what we do. We try to teach the steps. Now, you know, God gave Wilson great wisdom in the wording of these steps. The steps don't say, Paul, you're back poo crazy. You need to get right with God. You're full of character defects. You know, you're crazy. Otherwise, you know, that might not have worked. They talk about the problem, you know, the obsession of the mind, the compulsion of the body, living to use, using to live, ways and means to get more. So we learn about, I mean, step one is in 2 sections. The first section, powerless over addiction, you know, powerless over substances, is, you know, has 2 prime features. Namely, when I'm using, my body yearns for more, and my mind says, yeah, just get some more in, our lad, it'll be right. The solution is get some more in. And when Abby Thatcher came to see Bill Wilson, Bill offered him his solution. Bill's like, here you go, mate, here's my solution. And he offered him his liquid drugs. He offered him alcohol. But Abby had a better solution. He had a better solution, you know. And he had a mental defense against that first drink, a liquid drug, you know. And he was able to present his solution, you know. And those 2 men, in the will of God, you know, mean that now about 20 million folk have found lasting freedom from active addiction through over 100 12-step fellowships that have come about. And we're privileged and blessed to be part of Cocaine Anonymous today. And I've got on the screen some reading from the book that Bill Wilson wrote, you know. And we're looking at a chapter there that's called There Is a Solution. And it talks about the illness and the ex-problem drinker or drugger that's found this solution, who's properly armed with the facts about himself, you know. And the book knows each of us really well, you know, and we can win the entire confidence of another addict. It says in a few hours, but, you know, I think that in the grace of God, you can win the confidence of an addict in a very short time. You know, I mean, when I work with men and occasionally women now, I work with them every day, as in like every day, because that consistency, particularly if they're brand new out of the addiction, they need that consistency. They might not have any friends or family. They might have burnt all the bridges, and you know, consistency is everything, I think. And, you know, I like to get through a round of steps in about 3 weeks or so. You know, back in the day, they'd get through the steps in an afternoon. You know, Dr. Bob would get you through the steps in the afternoon. You'd leave his office with your amends list. You know, and I think it's really important working with others, and you mentioned it, helping others in this process. And it's about getting down to business, I think. When you're on a Stepwork call, it's really easy to get distracted, you know. So what I do is I'll spend the first few minutes asking how they're doing, any obsession to use, Then I want to know if they've done the suggestions, if they've been in a meeting, if they've listened to the podcasts, if they've read the literature, if they've done any kind of prayer. And then we're straight into the step, because the solution's in the steps. And yeah, man. So talk a little bit more about when you first came to meetings and first heard the message. Like, we've got plenty of time, by the way. So,
Yeah,
what was that process like?
So my first ever meeting was it was a big American meeting, and there was a guy talking on there called Earl, and I've not heard him share since actually, but I'm pretty, as close to a celebrity as you'll get in a Cocaine Anonymous. He must have been, because there was about, I think there was upwards of 250 people in the meeting. It was a huge one. It was, and they were telling this story, and he'd been in a plane crash and all sorts. I was just like, oh my, and I thought I had it bad, and it took me out of that self pity, because I knew that people had it worse than I did, and I kind of needed that. So that was my first meeting, and then I was getting to other meetings that were more like this side of the pond, and they were a little bit more relatable as well, just in terms of the same haunts as I did, and I just understood them a little bit better, and I started sharing early on. I don't think I shared in that first meeting, if I remember correctly, but in my second meeting I did, and I was just begging for help, and the help came, and that was so freeing to me. That was the biggest thing ever, that people were just messaging my phone, and they weren't messaging me asking me for anything. They were asking if I was all right, and that's what kept me there. That was what kept me there, and I was lucky with my first few meetings that they were very, very relatable, and I had a very strong network around me pretty much straight away, of some really, really good people that really know the book. They really are armed with the facts about themselves. I was really, really blessed that I've got it first time. Relapse isn't a part of my story. Fingers crossed it never becomes part of my story, but I feel strength. I do, and it's not an ego thing. It's really not. Because if my sponsors started listening to me talking about stuff like that, it'll make sure that I protect myself. But I don't feel like I'm ever gonna go back to that life. I feel like all I have to do is one of my gratitude, one of the 5 things, and I'd know for a fact where I'm gonna be, and I'll be turning everything down around me again, and I don't need to do that anymore, because I made amends when I was doing my amends list. Not even when I was doing my amends list. Sorry, that's not true. It was after, because it was people that I didn't realize I needed to make amends to. When I was first starting off at my new job and completely in the madness, I was leaving bang on time, never doing anything extra, and people were having to pick up that slack, and I didn't even realize it until I started talking to them when I was better, and they were saying I was a completely different person, because I moved departments, you see. So I just make amends now where they need to be made, and I didn't even realize at the time what I was doing, who I was hurting, or they were getting home late to their families because of my selfish decision. It just wasn't right. It just weren't. I weren't. But I try my best for that.
Yeah. I mean, you've mentioned meetings there, and sharing, and sense of identification, and you talked about how hearing other people's stories, and we hear some horrendous accounts. I don't like to call them stories, because they're factual accounts of people's lives, aren't they? And these are humbling things, and the statistics are terrifying. Conservatively speaking, they reckon it's about every 8 seconds someone dies of addiction somewhere around the world. That's the statistics. So we've been on this podcast half an hour, which is 2,400 seconds. So I don't know. A lot of people have died. You're talking like eight a minute in 30. It's over 200 people have died since we've been doing this podcast of addiction. So it's a killer illness, and that's why we're quite keen to deliver a strong message in meetings, aren't we? Because you get a window of opportunity You get an hour and a quarter to carry a message. And that might be, that message, or God really, through the human beings, and we'll talk about that in a minute, gives the message of hope and courage and freedom that any addict can quit drugging and find a new way to live. And so what I wanted to say is, in meetings, we have identification in the problem and in the solution. So it's a real vital spiritual experiences meetings. And our spiritual experience doesn't come in bags or spoons or bongs or pipes anymore. It comes from literature, meetings, nightly inventory, gratitude, and all these things give us that ongoing experience that's sufficient to keep us free.
Yeah, so, they're not difficult.
They're not difficult. I mean, when we were using, we'd sit around for hours and hours and hours doing very little, if anything. And so, I always say, if someone's willing to spend an hour or two a day in their recovery, then not only are they likely to stay clean, but they can improve their lives. I mean, you talked about it there, really, and it's on the screen, principled life in our homes, and it's who we are when we're alone. That's who we really are,
Yeah.
And you talked about using the group as a higher power. That has worked for a long, long time for a lot of good folk. If you're honest and talkative, and you're around good groups, then you've got a really good chance of never using again.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Completely agree.
My friend Frank died locally here with 42 years of continuous sobriety recently, and in that time he had a heart attack. 2 of his wives died at different times, of course, and his house got repossessed. And he stayed sober through all that, and he was in a really bad way, So I believe in permanent sobriety.
Yeah.
But we only do it one day at a time. And, really the program is to live a principled life, a principle in the spirit. So, it's an inside job, and largely to stay clean, it's about keeping that mental clarity, isn't it?
Yeah.
And emotional well-being. I don't know about you, George, but that comes and goes. There are moments, only brief moments in days where intrusive thoughts or challenging feelings about folk, things like this, it's not always easy, but keeping that mental clarity and that emotional sobriety, that's how we stay clean. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so as well. You said before, it's not just about staying clean. This program, for me, it's a new way of living, and if the way that I live now means that I don't need to do that, and it gets difficult sometimes, it does. But I've learned, if I put in half the effort into my, sorry, I'm really sorry about that, Paul, if you can hear that. So yeah, for me, it's what was I saying now? Yeah, if I put in half the effort into the recovery that I did my using, then I'd be okay. And that's what I do. I keep that mental clarity. I tell myself prayer.
Yeah.
And I live by it. I say it to myself multiple times a day. I don't really count it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, consistency produces consistency, and as we follow this path, we become better at developing the manner of living. The book talks about there are folk who can't grasp and develop this manner of living in I'll put it on the screen actually, in how it works there. This is chapter 5 out of Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, How It Works. And they're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living. Well, I've lost a lot of folk over the years, George. There's a lot of folk dead through this hideous self-centered delusion we call addiction. And for whatever reason, some of them could grasp this manner of living, but they couldn't develop it.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mystery why they can't, but you get my point. There are some folk, they kind of grasp the problem, but they can't develop it into their lives.
Yeah. one thing I always need to remind myself with is the frustration that I feel with other people who don't grasp it. Like I've had to check myself quite a few times on that when I try to take people through the work, and then they don't want to grasp it. I can feel a sense of frustration there, but not it's only because I want them to be well, and I know that if they do grasp it, you've got one hell of a chance of being okay. You know what I mean?
Well, that's right. And, talking about working with others, and the solution for permanent sobriety is to work with others, at least encourage others daily. And if you've got the time and availability to work with others daily, do a bit of service regularly, maintain a sober network, and learn more about this process. And you never need to use again, working with others is very rewarding, but it does teach us boundaries, and it reminds us how we can become codependent. See, I believe mankind is to be interdependent, but the danger is we can become codependent. So I think we're all one family. That's what I think. I think everyone's family on the whole planet. That's what I think. And we do need each other to some degree. No man's an island. But I'm not to be codependent, and working with others is challenging sometimes. If you want to work with someone that's bedeviled and deluded, full of consequences and fear, guilt and shame, we need to be measured and boundaried, and that's a challenge. It's kind of like where the next phase of growth comes in, I suppose, and personal development. But anyway, that's great. I so appreciate you coming along today onto the podcast. And not that I'm in any rush, but I know we've both got things to do. And is there anything you'd like to say for a minute or two to the listeners? Anything you'd like to add?
Absolutely. I hope that even just one person took something from that story. We can come back from the absolute brink if you just do the suggestions, and we're here to help. Cocaine Anonymous is here to help. That's the only thing it's here for, to help the still suffering addict. That's all we want to do. So if you are, sat in bed right now and you've come across this because it's 4:00 in the morning and you want to go to sleep and you are doing what I used to do, which was search for podcasts of people seeing how they got better, hopefully you stumbled on this one. And, there's meetings there up on the screen. Get yourself to one. Get a big book. Is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which might confuse you if drugs are the problem, but the solution's in there for all addiction. So I would get that. I would get myself to meetings, and then in the meeting you will find a sponsor, and I would do what they suggest. And then you can have, and it explains this, you can have a life beyond your wildest dreams, and that might not be a big house or a big car, but it'll be the mental clarity that Paul talked about, and it'll be being able to look your loved ones in the eye and just tell them the truth, and you'll live a life of truth. And there's no bigger prize than that for me. So yeah, I'm talking right now directly to those people that stumbled across this while they're in a bad way. Things can be okay. I promise you that. And Paul, I think that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I invite you to read the 9-step promises, if you'd like to, I'd just like to say, there are lots and lots of Zoom meetings. There's probably 600 Zoom meetings on right now. There's probably several thousand in-person meetings going on around the world right now. If you are desperate and looking for help, you never need to feel like this again. There is a solution. If you put your number in this chat, we will get back to you and send you resources on WhatsApp or ring you if you wish to be rang. But I'd certainly encourage anyone to get some meetings. Zoom meetings, you're not obliged to put your camera on. Indeed, most people don't. You're not obliged to speak. You're very welcome to come along and just listen. Conversely, if you want to share, you're very welcome to share. Sponsorship we've talked about, that's where someone that's recovered from what seemed to be a hopeless state of mind and body has found a new lifestyle and has been relieved from the obsession to drink and drug. We also have current lists of men and women that are ready, willing and able to take through these 12 steps. So yeah, reach out, get connected. Would you like to read these 9-step promises for us?
Of course, will, Paul. It'd be a pleasure. The 9-step promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Brilliant. So appreciate you coming along, George. Thanks for your time, my friend.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. The pleasure has been all mine, Paul. Promise.
Super job. Okay, family, stay strong, stay connected, and we'll be back soon in the next one.